Alright, so welcome to the stage, your MC for the lightning tap portion. Feminista Jones!
And I like to retain control of my faculties. Shout out to everybody that does anal. I love watching it. What's good, y'all? Welcome. Oh my gosh, this is the sexiest night in Philadelphia of the year. And we are so happy to have you here. Welcome to Sextopia. How many people are drinking tonight? Let me see your drinks if you're drinking tonight. What y'all drinking? Better not be drinking no bitch ass drinks. Who's drinking whiskey? That's my soul sister right there. So tonight we really put our foot in this one. The only thing I'm gonna ask, we just got a couple of ground rules here, alright? One, respect for everybody that comes to the stage, right? It takes a lot to get in front of people and to share some of the things that are going to be, you know, shared tonight. Some people, it's their first time. Give it up for the first time performance. I've been on the stage for 25 years or so, but everybody has their first time. And so we want to make sure that we show them all the love and appreciation and acceptance and inclusion and support that they need to get this out. We really believe in this sex positive movement, and we're going to continue to do this work. It's National Masturbation Month. I love it. May is National Masturbation Month, and it's also a time to really increase awareness about safe sex and healthy sex and exploratory sex and consensual sex and non-consensual BDSM when you want. It's okay. We're participating. We're having a good time. All right, so we have a great lineup. I'm gonna be your host for the night. As this drink goes down, the fun will go up. All right. Do a couple things. The bathrooms outside. Outside this door to the left, each one has multiple stalls, gender neutral. Who gives a shit? Just wash your hands. No, seriously, wash your hands. I mean, some people just really don't wash their hands. We got raffles for sale. We are raffling off a registration to the Woodhull Freedom Conference. I love that conference. I spoke there a few years ago and talked about sex positive messaging and hip-hop music over 40 years. It was a great time. So we got the raffles are $1 each, or you can buy 5 for $8. And when this drink gets here, I might raffle off a date with me. Who knows? All right. Also, Whores Day is June 2nd. Whores Day is June 2nd. I just learned this 10 minutes ago. It's fucking amazing. Whores Day, celebrating all the whores out there, is June 2nd. I heard that Philadelphia is going to be having a number of local events, and that's really a great way to kick off Pride Month in Philadelphia. How many people want Philly Pride to stop being so corporate? Listen, they were like, you got to pay $15 for wristband to go pay people. What the fuck out of here? That's not cool, right? But Pride Month is gonna be dope this year. All right, so let's get this started. I'm so excited. There's so many sexy people. I'm not objectifying you. I'm not. Me too. All right. Shandine Francis, MFT, is a marriage and family therapist, professor, and author that specializes in sex therapy and social justice. She has been featured on platforms like 6 ABC, the New York Times, and the Huffington Post to share her unique expertise, and is sought internationally to speak on topics such as sexual self-esteem, intimacy, and relationship negotiation. Shandine uses her signature combination of warmth, humor, and enthusiasm to help people improve their relationships and live in peace and pleasure. With her presentation towards sexual liberation, pleasure in a post-colonial world, please welcome Shandine Francis.
Let's move that. I like a pole, but this one's a little big for me. Cool, so you let me know when. Awesome. So I've got roughly 5 minutes to take us through a decolonization journey. Are you with me? All right, let's jump in. So today, or I guess this evening, right, really thinking about what does it mean to really access our experiences of pleasure. So hello, my name is Shandine Francis. I never take anyone on a journey without introducing you to me. I want to let you know a little bit about how I would consider this frame, and so I think that some of my identities matter if I'm going to challenge you to reflect on some of yours. So I want to ask you this question to start us off. What do you have to do to deserve pleasure?
Nothing.
Love yourself, nothing. Respect other people. All of those are beautiful answers, and I think that some of it is biased by maybe the company that we keep, but when we think about the larger social narrative, a lot of what we believe about what we need to do to access pleasure, whether that's sexual or otherwise, really comes from a cis, white, heteropatriarchal frame that says that you only deserve pleasure if you have earned it. And so it comes from a colonial structure that really acknowledges or doesn't acknowledge that not all bodies are existing equally in this world. And so colonization is really the warping or the claiming of our minds. And so what would it look like for us to remove ourselves from the idea that certain people or certain practices or certain bodies are more deserving? And so the process of decolonization is really uprooting that narrative. It's really turning back inwards and celebrating the person-centered experience of what it means to feel and what it means to connect. And it's intentional. And ultimately, it's a realization that pleasure is liberatory. The experience of pleasure is one of our easiest accesses to a justice-based practice. And so I really do believe that by decolonizing or uprooting the narratives that most of us have learned about what it means to experience pleasure, we actually can experience sexual empowerment and liberation. Sound good for folks? So what is pleasure? The feeling after you sneeze, warming up when you're cold. For me, it's any plate of food being offered to me that I didn't have to pay for. Today happens to be my birthday, so if anyone wants to celebrate me, I am open to feeding. Pleasure in the brain really liberates us from most of the experiences that we feel are keeping us trapped inside of an unpleasant place. Freedom of fear, uprooting from shame. It is non-violent, it's not aggressive. It centers spontaneous desire. So all of those things that we do to plan out in expectancy of what we're supposed to perform to get pleasure in return once we have earned it. Real pleasure maps out in our experience starting from desire that arises from its center. And so as we think of a person-centered experience of pleasure, this is work that I've been doing for the last sort of 3 years. You'll also hear from Dr. Zuleika Hepworth-Clark, who's closing us off today, who connected with me around some of this work. But thinking about what it means to really turn inwards around pleasure. What brings you spiritual pleasure? Right? Meaning in the world. What do you believe and value? Think about aesthetic pleasure. What do you like to see and look at? Social pleasure. Whom do you like to connect to? Who do you like to share with in conversation? Who do you like to be around? Emotional pleasure. What makes you feel good? What are the feelings you like to feel? Sexual pleasure. What releases you? What grounds you? What connects you to your core? And recreational pleasure. What brings you rest? What brings you peace? What brings you centeredness? What makes you feel whole? as we expand those experiences, those person-centered experiences of pleasure, we no longer are tracking how our bodies work or act, whom we love or don't, how we might want to express or experience ourselves outside of a traditional or frame. I want to read this and I'll see if 20 seconds will permit. The moment we choose to love, we begin to move against domination, against oppression. The moment we choose to love, we move towards freedom, to act in ways that liberate ourselves and others. That action is the testimony of love as freedom. That's bell hooks. Pleasure is justice. And so here's an affirmation. I'm going to read it first, and I'm hoping that second time around we can read together. The possibilities for pleasure in my life are endless. I can create pleasure for myself. I am deserving of pleasure. Can we try it together? All right, let's do it right here. The possibilities for pleasure in my life are endless. I can create pleasure for myself. I am deserving of pleasure. I'd like everyone, as it feels comfortable, to either turn your eyes inward, close your eyes, look to the floor. I'd like you to repeat after me. I am deserving of pleasure.
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 This one, say it for your ancestors to hear you. I am deserving of pleasure.
I am deserving of pleasure.
Marinate on that for a moment. When you come back, I'd like for you to celebrate yourselves as we took this quick journey together. If any of you would like to journey with me at any other point in time, some of my information is here. You're welcome to connect with me if you see me or take a screenshot of this slide. Thank you so much for being here.
Wow. Janine, I'm sorry I mispronounced your name earlier. I'm sorry about that. Oh my God, happy birthday. Happy birthday to ya. Happy birthday to ya. Happy birthday to ya. Yeah, girl. Yeah, girl. So, welcome to the future of sex. That is our theme tonight. We are imagining a sex-positive future and what that would look like and how you imagine it. So we invited you all to share your ideas and your thoughts and propose to us how would you imagine sex and pleasure in the future. And so what a perfect way to set the tone for this evening. Y'all ready to keep going? All right. Coming to the stage, we have Deborah Rose. She is a lifelong Philly femme, an alt-sex organizer and activist. She started putting together play parties in warehouses and nightclubs more than a decade ago. What was that? And has since organized countless educational, play, and social events. She's also one of the organizers of Ramble Group, the world's largest alt-sex unconference. You gotta say unconference. She has spent the last 3 years building with its members an SEXx Collective, Philly Music Hall, which provides marginalized sexual communities with the resources and access they need to build stronger and safer spaces. And aside from her work as an activist, Deborah Rose is an all-around nerd and would like to be reading a book at most times. She also loves to use physics, gravity, and rope to make humans into interesting shapes, bringing to us overlapping and intersecting alt-sex communities. Welcome, Deborah Rose.
I'm the executive director of Philly Music Hall. Like Feminista Jones said, we're a member-based alt-sex collective working to create safer and inclusive spaces for alt-sex communities to grow, become better, educate themselves, educate adjacent communities about who we are and what we're doing. So what's alt-sex? Alt-sex is a set of overlapping and intersecting identity groups built around shared experience of how a person loves sex in relationships. How. One of the most fundamental things you have to understand is queer subcultures in theory bred alt-sex and grew it out of what it was become, and if we mirror and has provided us an opportunity to mirror and model the structures of previous sexual subcultures that have come before us. While the communities and identities are distinct, the incredible amount of overlap between sexual identity groups and the many ways those communities sit right on top of each other, and as they share resources and provide access to each other, it can create confusion about where identities go and what umbrella we all exist under. Commonly understood, alt-sex is its own set of identities and subcultures, completely separate from the sexual subcultures that grew it, bred it, and allowed us to talk about the sexual freedoms of how we relationship versus who we relationship with. What you also have to understand about alt-sex is that it exists now in a varying degree of the public eye based on where we exist, where we live. Are we in an urban environment? Are we in a rural environment? But we're existing in the public eye at this point everywhere in this like late stage capitalistic hellscape we're all living in. We're written about by the media that doesn't understand us and commodifies us for clicks. We're objectified and commodified by our own organizations in our own communities, as well as a media that fundamentally has no interest in understanding who we are and does not do anything to help us in that area. Either that commodification or objectification means that we are seen, or that the unique ways we build culture or take up space in this world is understood at all. There's no monolith of experience or identities or needs within alt-sex. Most of its members hold identities under multiple umbrellas. It can become sexual identity word salad. Many of you know that. For example, I am Deborah Rose. I'm a queer, non-monogamous rigor sadist. That is my set of I exist in multiple alt-sex communities, and the social norms and expectations of every individual community vary and shift depending on the spaces that you're occupying. But there are three main umbrellas of alt-sex, and that is ethical non-monogamy, leather communities, and modern kink and BDSM spaces. These are not comprehensive. These are communities that are organizing structures and events around shared identities. There are countless identities that exist within these emerging, established communities that are not being mentioned. Everything is evolving in alt-sex. It is constantly growing, constantly evolving, and if you say something in theory, it could not be true tomorrow. That's where we're at in this movement, instead of communities, instead of identities. Ethical non-monogamy looks different to everybody. I think we can agree upon that. But for the sake of brevity, let's say that there's two main ways we see it expressed in the media, and that's the poly community and the swing scene. That does not mean that people who are ethically non-monogamous identify as either a swinger or a poly person. But if you're ethically non-monogamous, you will interact with poly communities or the swing community as you interact with those spaces. That does not mean that that is a comprehensive look at ethical non-monogamy. When it comes to the other umbrella, though, it gets way more complicated because kink and BDSM and the nuances of those communities are incredibly complicated. But what you do have to fundamentally... Thank you. I appreciate you. What you do have to understand at that point is that leather came before us all, and it grew most of what we have now. And that is fundamental to understand. Because if you erase the work that came before us, and you erase how we got here and the sexual freedoms that got us, have conversations about how we relationship, you will build walls. And the walls in alt-sex are not helping. They are not helping. And it's when we erase the work that other communities have done that we start building those walls. Out of leather communities and the bars grew the emergence of het BDSM communities, which provided spaces and resources to grow countless kink identities, some of which have grown their own self-governing, self-sustaining communities underneath BDSM. Pet play, age play. The best example of this in a large scale that I can comment on is the road community. I could just shower. Road communities are the largest and most visible examples of the subcultures that I'm talking about, building subcultures within subcultures. Road communities have nearly as many conventions and organized events as generalized BDSM. It is the great ambassador of the scene, and it is a palatable and highly visible form of play, and it has grown to become a monolith within an already monolithic So this is why I was holding back. I know, a monolithic community. With the rise of the internet and the emergence of FetLife 10 years ago, the community's exploded. I don't have to explain how that explosion happened to the people in this room, but let's just say that lowering stigma and raising access has done what it has done for every community since in memoriam, and it's huge now. The communities are engaged in the everyday process of finding the best practices that address the safety concerns that come along with this burgeoning community. And their work of building an active consent culture is always made harder by the inability to organize effectively on any one social platform. And that is the biggest problem in kink communities right now, because we have nothing to organize on online effectively. Without mincing words, the kink community has been building its community on a porn site for a decade. And it doesn't work. And the fear of outing is what's keeping us all from jumping from FetLife to Facebook. Because the fear of outing drives so many concerns in alt sex. It is the largest safety and predatory and consent behaviors. It is the greatest fear of many of our members. Most of the marginalization that comes from alt sex members face is the possible legal and social fallout of being outed. People lose their jobs, people lose their children, you can lose any professional license you have. BDSM practice and play in particular faces marginalization because there's no legal way to consent to harm. This is a complex and nuanced legal precedent that is very hard and not a whole lot of incentive to break down because its origins are in the Violence Against Women Act. And the Violence Against Women Act is a landmark piece of legislation that in some cases has been used to prosecute BDSM. The other concern is high-profile predators, the rising understanding of BDSM practices being used by high-profile predators to misrepresent the violence that's actually being done to women and co-opting our identities to explain actual harm and actual violence that's being done to women. Schneiderman, Goreshi, this has to stop. It's doing us tangible harm and we have to advocate for ourselves when it's happening. Within these communities, we have to center growing consent culture and the processes associated with addressing predators and abusers. It dominates all the conversations on all the platforms our communities are having on, and we have to start having those conversations with adjacent communities. This siloing of information that happens between our communities where we do not communicate effectively either with the communities that are adjacent to us or on top of each other. Swing doesn't talk to poly, poly doesn't talk to kink, kink doesn't talk to anybody within itself. We need to start, let's just be real, guys, you know it's true. Why is this? It's a byproduct of capitalism, and it's a silo and a sphere of scarcity and a clash of personalities, and it has to end. It's doing us great harm. These communities are exploding. We have to be able to talk to each other and create the structures.
I mean, she's right, but we want to be fair to all of our presenters and make sure that we stay within our time constraints. But give another round of applause because everything that she was talking about is so next we have Signy Espinosa. Ella es una latina, okay, de Nicaragua y Puerto Rico. Sus padres. Her parents are from Nicaragua and Puerto Rico. Signy is an outspoken reproductive rights and Latinx rights advocate. And in addition to consistently volunteering for Planned Parenthood, thank you, she also sits on the Planned Parenthood Leadership Action Council and is also on the board of the Women's Medical Fund. Who else do we know? Co-founder, Lisa Gonzalez, everybody. An entity devoted to financially supporting those women who need abortions but cannot afford them. That was me when I was 16. During her free time, you can find her fighting off trolls on social media or sucked into a Maya Angelou novel at a local cafe. If you will, put your hands together for Signy Espinosa.
Hi everyone. Hi. I just wanted to say I'm wearing this Fenty lipstick tonight, and I feel good about it. I also stole it from my mom, and she's standing over there. So thank you, Feminista. As she said, my name is Signia Espinoza, and I'm going to talk about sex and the Latinx in the same sentence, and what that means, and what that context is in our community. So I'm going to give you a little taste about sex. I'm going to give you a little taste of sex in the Latinx culture and some of the traditions and norms that we really need to just tackle and dismantle in my culture. And I'm going to do that by sharing two brief stories. I kind of give you a little, like I said, a little taste, because 5 minutes is not a long time to do this, all right? So the first story I'm going to talk about is how, let's say about a year ago, I asked my dad how he lost his virginity. You know? And he told me the story, and I was really upset about it. You know, I felt sorry for him, and I didn't have the words to say. I didn't know what to do. He told me that in Nicaragua, my grandpa actually brought him to this room. He was about 9 or 10 years old, and he was like, there's a woman that's in there, and she's waiting for you, right? And she's our maid, and you're gonna do what you gotta do, because you gotta man up, right? So he was a child, and I told my dad, I'm like, Dad, as a sexual assault survivor myself, I was like, you know, you're not alone, you can talk to me about this. And he's like, talk about what? What's there to talk about, right? He, you know, talks about this story, he laughs about it with his friends, and that's what's normal, right? So the second story is how my parents found out I wasn't a virgin. Long story short, and another time we can talk about this, I was actually caught on camera at home because my parents suspected something was going on. And after, you know, listening to my dad tell me, call me, whatever you want to call it, we drove to my ex-boyfriend's house at the time, and his mom came out and was like, hey, do you guys want to come in? You guys want to talk about it? And my dad was like, no, there's nothing to talk about. Good for your son, though. But, you know, we'll take care of Signy when we get home, right? So all of these stories and, you know, my upbringing, I'm like, you know what, we gotta talk about this. There's something going on here. And one of the things I want to say is full disclosure. My story is not every Latina story, not every Latinx story, but the truth is, these stories exist. And a lot of my Latin family and my culture, this is what it looks like, right? So how do we dissect these stories, right? And what can we take away from them other than the obvious, that machismo is real in our culture, right? Well, I've never talked to my parents openly about sex, about masturbating, about reproductive health, but they've talked to me about marriage and protecting your virginity and all of these things that don't really add up, right? So I think that these stories really shut me out and really led to more experiences in my life, right? So I had my first sex ed experience ever as a sophomore in college at the University of Oregon, after having had an abortion, right? And the hardest thing was, it wasn't until my 20s that my mom and I actually worked on our relationship and can talk about everything now, because I was like, you know what? I gotta step up, I'm an adult now, I can do this, right? So the power of children and what they can do, and honestly, our political world right now, 16, 15-year-olds speaking up, right? So because our time is so short, and I like me some facts, because I always fight off trolls, all right, they're important. As of 2016, we have 48 people in the US. Of the 48 people in the US, 1 in 5 are Latino, or identify as Latinx. It's projected that by 2045, there will be 1 in 4. So our population is growing and we've taken over. But I am a public health student, and I know that we are more susceptible to a lot of health disparities that are worth mentioning here tonight. Latinos are 3 times more likely to be diagnosed with HIV. Young Latino girls are twice as more likely than their white counterparts to experience teenage pregnancy. There are 1 in 3 Latina women will experience domestic violence in their lifetime. So these facts truly perpetuate, these stories and really putting together what I was saying earlier, right? And what our culture really puts out there. And that is that men should be propelled to have as many sexual encounters as possible and do what they want to do, while women need to conserve themselves and be shunned and embarrassed if they fail to do so. On top of this is a compounding issue that, up here? Okay. Compounding on this issue is the portrayal of Latinas and Latinx people in American culture. So one of the stories I like to share about when I think about Latinx in the US is the hypersexualization of Latina women. Sophia Vergara, anyone in Modern Family? We talk about how great Modern Family is, but are we just big titties and bodies and lipstick? Not all the time, right? So, I'm not sure if any of you have seen a commercial that Coca-Cola had, but they had this commercial where there was these two white guys on the beach having a good time, and this Latina woman was walking by them, and there was this like Spanish music in the background, and they're like, damn, like, she's hot, right? And they put up a Coca-Cola bottle up to her body, and they were like, yep, cheers, And I was like, whoa, damn, like, I know she's hot, but damn, you gonna do it like that? So young Latinas, as myself, have no choice but to be pulled between these two polar opposites. The conservative, abstinence-only portrayal of ourselves in our homes, and the single, faceted sex object peddled by American culture. Just think about that. So for me, what's the biggest takeaway of these facts and these stories? For me is that in Latin culture, family is everything. And that is where the change has to start. And I hope that you guys can join me in engaging in conversations like these, because it wasn't until sharing my abortion story that my mom shared hers with me too, and we had a moment. And that is what propelled me to stand here in front of you today.
All right, we're gonna keep this moving. Just as an FYI, we are gonna have a small, short break after our next 3 performances. So if you can hold it until then, I mean, it's okay to do what you gotta do, you know what I'm saying? But, just try to minimize all of that. And then, yeah, are y'all enjoying this? Like, this is some shit. This is like some sexy nerd dork shit. I love it. Like, what's up, sex nerds? Okay. That should be a thing, sex nerds. Yeah. SEXx Interactive. We already got it. Don't even try it. That's us. All right. So next we have a veteran to the stage. Alex Beauvais is a college professor and men and masculinities scholar. Last year he kept up. Okay? He had, it's dope. Like, he was real smart. He curates, I was like, holy shit, this dude is smart. He curates Talk Like a Man, a social media project that explores American masculinity in the 21st century. And to bring us Omega Man, the subversive masculinity of men's meta-amoral relationships, please welcome Alex Beauvais.
All right, tonight I'd like to share with you some of the results of my study of polyamorous men. In particular, I looked at polyamorous men's relationships with their metamors who are also men. Metamors are the partners of your partners. So if you think about like in-laws, that's kind of not a bad analogy. And I just wanted to look at the characteristics of these relationships, what made them work, what were challenges. Now, I have a professional interest in this, as feminists just said, I'm a men and masculinity scholar, but I also have a personal interest. I'm polyamorous. All of my partners currently are women, and most of their partners historically have been men. So I've had a lot of personal experience with metamor relationships, and I had my own sort of thoughts and feelings on this. But there is no literature on this. I did the first study ever on this. Yeah, well, lit review is hard. But anyway, but we do know a lot about men's friendships. What we know is that boys have these very rich friendships. They talk about sharing their deepest, darkest secrets with each other. There's a lot of physical affection in friendships among boys. Around adolescence, this completely flips. And what we see is that men start to see each other as rivals, as competitors. They begin to close off their emotions, particularly in relationships with other men. And mostly due to homophobia, physical touch is largely absent from relationships among adult, heterosexual at least, men. So I had about 400 people fill out a survey, and I chose 24 to talk to for about 45 minutes to an hour. And I tried to get a pretty good amount of diversity within the study. I'm proud to say that it's probably the most diverse polyamory study yet, but could have done a better job. I only talked to heterosexual and bisexual or queer identified men. There's really good literature on gay men's relationships, but it suggests that it's very different in ways that might have confounded the data, and so I had to narrow it to one group, and that's why I looked at the group I looked at. And I asked them really, again, about their metamor relationships. But what's amazing is how much about masculinity came up. All these names have been changed. Ethan said, I don't think you can have alpha males in poly. And we'll see if that's true. But what I want to talk to you about are some of the characteristics of these relationships that I think do defy masculinity norms. So when I asked men what were the things that made your metamor relationships work really well, there were three main things I want to point out. One, a sense of shared purpose. So Henry talked about shared directive or a bond that he had with his metamors. A lot of men talked about being on a team, working together as a team, over and over again. There's a wonderful story by Ali where he talked about a mutual partner who was having a really bad week, and so he said to his metamor, like, hey, you get her the ice cream she really likes, and I'll clean up the house and make sure that's really nice, and we'll really take care of her. So again, this sense of mutuality and shared purpose. I heard this over and over again. And reciprocally, metamor relationships where men were struggling lacked these qualities. The second characteristic is open communication. So Andre says, polyamory has been a tool for me to learn that I'm not a mind reader. I need to know how somebody's feeling. I need to talk to them. And the men in my study, some of them had methods for this, like a monthly meeting, or they would like go out for a beer to talk about, their feelings and their relationships. Michael talked about how all relationships need this sort of communication, honesty, all of these things. And again, the reciprocal was true. When I asked men what the challenges with their metamor relationships were, over and over again it was lack of communication, poor communication. Those are seen as impediments to smooth functioning metamor relationships. And then the third characteristic is mutual respect and consideration. Jeremy talks about respect for the relationship with the mutual partner, but also respect for men's time, respect for even sometimes like their hobbies. Some of the men I talked to said, oh yeah, I went and did this hobby that I wasn't even interested in, but I wanted to show, respect and consideration for my metamor. And then for Simon, it was about acceptance. You accept me for being me, and let me accept you for being you. And again, the reciprocal were signs of challenging metamor relationships. Okay, so what does this have to do with masculinity? Well, when you look at those traits we talked about earlier, I saw the opposite with most of the men that I talked to. So Diego told this story about walking in on his wife and metamor and thinking, this is where I'm supposed to shoot one or both of you. But saying that, in fact, he didn't feel that at all. He just thought it was really cool. Cyril had a metamor at a party say, like, I'm really happy with the way that my partner is after she's with you. And he was like, this is a new thing for me. But the cool thing to notice here is that these men were aware of the masculine norms about, oh, you're supposed to be competitive, you're supposed to be jealous, but in fact, these were not their experience, and they were pleased that it wasn't their experience. In terms of restricted emotionality, Anthony talked about a stepping stone for men to learn some of the emotional skills that we talked about. Vulnerability, openness, being metamors allowed this for a lot of men. Kamal said, being a metamor brings you really close together in a way that you don't necessarily share with other men. Now, this wasn't all of the men that I talked to, it wasn't all of their experience, but it was a very common theme that I heard over and over again. Now, the third characteristic was the physical touch, and affection. And I have to say on this one, my study didn't show any particular propensity toward more of that among the polyamorous men I talked to. It could be that this is a norm that they didn't talk to me about. It could be that it's not a norm even within polyamorous communities. It's a little bit hard to tell. All right, so what does all of this mean in terms of, our theme tonight, and what does all this mean? Well, first I just want to say really quickly that, this was one study, it was a small sample, I don't want to overgeneralize, but it was a diverse sample, and I heard over and over again a lot of the same themes, so I think it's fair to say that within many, maybe most, polyamory communities, there are a set of social norms around masculinity that are quite contrary to the sort of culture at large's views. And the main ways were the ones that I was talking about. So not seeing these other men as competitors, being emotionally open to communicating with them. That these norms are here. And so if we're talking about new cultural paradigms in our sextopia, if we're looking for the masculinity of the 21st century, it's already here. If there are no alpha males in polyamory, maybe there are omega men. If only we take the time to look.
I'm gonna keep putting this back up because I'm tall and we don't get representation, okay? I'm 6 feet tall, I'm taller than 85% of men in this world. Represent for me. Accessibility, bitch. Okay. I want my second drink. Listen, I told you. I told you it was just gonna get different. Okay. So we have two more presentations. Are these people not brilliant? Like, wow. Okay, so next we have Galia Godal. Galia Godal is a sexual behavior specialist for adults with intellectual disabilities, a communication coach, and an all-around sex nerd. Here we are again, sex nerds. Sex nerds. She lives in West Philly with her polycule, 2 cats, and a dog. And she can be found at blogging at www.cerebral-sexuality.com. To present Disabling Sex, please welcome Galia.
Future of sex. The future of sex is a place where everyone has equal access to their own body. How can anyone not have access to their own body, you might ask? What does that access look like? What does it mean to be able to interact with your own self? It means that no one teaches you that your body is wrong. It means no one teaches you that masturbation is shameful or that it's a sin to feel good. It means learning the word vulva, prostate, clitoris. Yes. It's learning how your own body works. When you don't know what your own body can do, how can you interact with it? I work with adults who have intellectual disabilities. I'm a sexual behavior specialist, and it means that if someone has maladaptive sexual behaviors like running away and having unprotected sex, like communicating poorly with their partners, like masturbating in front of their neighbor's house, they bring me in to see what I can do. And I'm not here to stop them or punish them for any of the behaviors that they have going on. I come in to help find out what their motivation for their actions are and find different ways to motivate them to have healthier behaviors, healthier ways of interacting with the world. I also end up working as a sex educator with these folks. Their sex education is limited. Their access to Google and sex gossip, which is very important, is limited. And as a result, access to their own bodies is limited. Their sex education, if it exists at all, is limited to 3 things. 1, avoiding pregnancy. 2, avoiding STIs. And 3, avoiding sex offending. That's it. So I work to disable sex. Disabling sex means that access to sex isn't dependent on ability. I have seen some incredible work and discussions around disabling sex in terms of physical ability, usually with regard to mobility limitations. Please note the stairs that lead to this event tonight. But we also need to talk about access to sex that isn't dependent on cognitive ability.
Yes.
So what do we do with that? This is what my utopia looks like. The perfect future of sex. Sex education is not an optional class for students with disabilities. They are not pulled out of sex ed classes for speech therapy or job training, which happens frequently. They're not moved into vocational training while their peers sit on the playground and talk with each other about menstruation and wet dreams and hooking up, which are an incredibly valuable part of sexual exploration and development. If students with disabilities are pulled out of the mainstream sex ed, it's only to put them into a specialized sex education class, one with physical models and role-playing that is aimed at the learning styles that are best suited to these students, that are most going to resonate with them. Their parents and guardians are given so much support and resources to teach them how to talk to their children about sex, about their bodies, about bodily exploration, how to accept sex play and masturbating and dating as a teenager, which the parents of neurotypical students have accepted in these how to talk to your children about sex books and blogs, etc., that our poor parents devoured when we were starting to get our periods or what have you. In my utopia, children are never taught that sex is the opposite of safety. This is a world where everyone uses their words. Each person is given the space and the resources to figure out their own needs and the support and kindness to voice those needs.
Yes.
Children are encouraged to ask questions, and they grow into adults who still ask questions. And those questions are answered respectfully and truthfully. One of my clients was taught that if he has sex with a woman and catches an STI, his dick will rot and fall off. His words. But nobody taught him how to get tested for an STI or how to talk to a partner about getting tested for STIs. He has had, therefore, no access to fear-free sex. That is abuse. That is abuse because he has been denied the right to interact with other consenting humans, just as if he'd been chemically castrated, which also happens to men with intellectual disabilities, by the way.
Yes. Wow.
In my utopia, adults with intellectual disabilities enter sexual or romantic relationships through mutual desire and excitement, and not through a need for protection or through a loss of power. I wouldn't have any clients who have been sexually assaulted or tricked into having sex in this utopia. When my clients have dilemmas, they try to work through them alone, and they don't always have the personal resources to do that. They do that because they know they're not supposed to talk about sex with anyone. So they make some pretty bad choices. Boy, howdy. In my future, in this beautiful future, when someone has a dilemma, they feel comfortable asking their guardians for more information, and their guardians and their staff members step in and help them through their problems step by step, because that's how it has always happened for them, and they've never had to learn a new way of dealing with shitty problems. I shouldn't be the sexual revolution to my folks. I shouldn't be the first person who has ever looked at them and said the word breasts to their face. That shouldn't be my job. It's a tough line, I will admit. A lot of folks with intellectual disabilities are easily suggestible and want to be liked. It's tough to ascertain consent. It's tough to maintain a healthy relationship without accidentally pressuring them into having sex. It's tough to make sure they and their partners know enough about sex to make sure that they're making healthy choices. It's really tough. But it needs to be happening. It's the only way to make sure that folks with intellectual disabilities have equal access to their own bodies and their own sexuality by having these conversations with them from the beginning. No one wants to tell the kid within the special ed class about sex in case someone accuses them of sexual abuse. That is a thing. But not talking to that kid means that all of their sex education for folks with intellectual disabilities is reactionary. Take it from a special educator, we don't want anything to do with our folks to be reactionary. I want each of my clients to have a mental flowchart. I do X, Y happens. No surprises. It should be mentioned, the system isn't totally borked. Sometimes I'm called because someone has been masturbating in the corner and they're like, oh shit, we have to fix this problem. But sometimes a staff member looks at their client and they go, wow, this person's been browsing porn and texting people of the opposite gender. We should probably give them a support team. There are solid reasons that people bring me in. The system isn't entirely screwed up. That's pretty rad. 90% of my clients, though, are told that they may not have kids. They're informed they may not have kids, and they want to have kids. Who wouldn't want to have kids when it's this endless source of love for someone in a population that is constantly ignored, yet they are forced to take oral birth control or to get IUDs, or are told that they are too young. My 6-year-old client thinks she's too young to have a child because that's what her mom told her. So my completely wild world is all of these amazing concepts that I've told you right now is not just for people with intellectual disabilities, but all of us. Do they sound rad? Ronald Autonomy, life communication.
I'm a storyteller. I'll tell you a quick story. So I'm a social worker. How do people know that? I'm a mental health social worker, and one of the things that I challenged in my last agency in New York was in our treatment plans, we had nothing about sexual relationships. Because in the 1970s, when we're treating people with mental health disabilities or psychiatric disabilities, they didn't want them procreating. So they didn't even include intimacy or intimate relationships into their treatment plans. Guess who changed that? Because we can live with depression, anxiety, agoraphobia, and still want to fuck. That's me. Shout out to everybody who takes medication every day. Okay, so before we bring on before the break, I just want to let you know we're going to have a brief break because we are running a little bit behind, but we are going to bring up a couple of folks to speak about SEXx Interactive as well as the Working Womanist Collective. Let me say something about this. We are raising money for an organization that centers Black womanhood and our experience in working and the things that we are dealing with, okay? SEXx is all about giving back and supporting people that are doing the important work on the ground. And so I said, listen, what about WWC? And you're like, yes. And so shout out to my SEXx Collective folks for supporting that. So if you have extra and want a donation, you can make a donation at the front here, and we are also going to be donating a portion of our proceeds to that organization. So, to bring us into the break, Kevin Seidman. I was right the first time. All right. Kevin Seidman is a Philadelphia-born artist and writer who has built his own business illustrating and publishing erotic comics, y'all. Clap it up for that. BA in film from Temple University, Kevin has dedicated his life to visual storytelling. Now, with his focus on eroticism, he hopes to open and expand people's minds on sex, with the ultimate goal of changing our culture's long-standing negative and closed views on sexual preferences. If y'all are ready for fetishes of the future, there are none, welcome Kevin Seidman.
Really awesome talks and have follow-ups. So.
You got it!
We'll solve that fetishes.
Woo!
Everybody who has a fetish, raise your hand.
I got like 5.
Alright, keep your hands up, keep your hands up.
I got like 5.
If you are willing to share that fetish with your friends and families, drop it. If you are willing, drop it. So those of you left, why are you not willing to share? Anybody who's no?
There you go. I don't think they understand.
You don't think they understand? Why don't you understand? Think they might judge you? No. Oops, I'm not talking to my. You're right. Most people might not understand. They might judge you. It's a very common thing to be, afraid to share what your fetishes are. What if your fetish was your job? When you meet someone new, what what you do for a living is one of the first questions that people ask. It's practically a part of your identity. Everybody, my name is Kevin Seidman, and I draw erotic comics for a living, and more specifically, fetish comics. I've been doing it for almost 3 years now, and would anybody here like to take a stab at how long it took me to start revealing to people that I did?
3 years. Still doing it. Never. You still don't.
Good. It's about 2.5 years. It's about 2.5 years. I hid an entire part of myself to the world. I lurked in the corners of coffee shops to draw alone where nobody would be able to see my work. I stayed at home in my studio apartment, keeping it all to myself, simply watching the walls close in on me. Every time a person asked what I did, I had to come up with some euphemistic answer about illustrating comics and commissions and can they see my website, but oh, I don't really have one set up yet. There's some stuff I have on my phone. I kept safe word stuff on my phone for occasional. I was petrified to let anyone know what I did. Because my fetish, what I draw, is part of my identity. I can't take that out of me. I was born with it, I developed it just from living. You're probably wondering, well, Kevin, your fetish can't be that bad. I thought it was. I realized I enjoyed it before the internet was a thing, so I had no idea of knowing that I wasn't the only human being alive that liked it. I didn't even know there was a word for it, but there is. Vorophilia. Vor is the more commonly used abbreviation. Vor is the fantasy of something being swallowed whole by something else. There are many facets, subsets, and preferences to this fetish, like there are for many. My very particular niche of this niche is called woman eating. I specialize in the damsel in distress scenario where the damsel does not get saved. It's considered disaster erotica. Any manner of creature, monster, or animal can devour these women, and yes, they meet their grisly demise in the stomachs. It depicts violence, and it depicts death. Now, how could anyone be turned on by such a thing? Especially a good kid like me. How could such a good kid, so kind and polite, never got in trouble, smart, bunch of friends, how could he like something so sick and disgusting and ugly? Before I even continue, I will say the reason I can enjoy this is because it's fantasy-based, and I'm able to separate fantasy from reality. What I enjoy in my head is not at all indicative of what I enjoy in real life. I do not want to harm or witness harm to real people. But I digress because that is a whole other talk. But that's all I could think, was that I was sick and disgusting and afraid. There were already people on the internet telling me that I needed to be locked up, that I was mentally unstable, and that people who created art like the art I create should be persecuted like pedophiles. I didn't want my friends and family to think of me that way. I didn't want them to think, what else could Kevin be hiding? But I loved this work. It began to change my life and who I was. The more I did it, the more good I saw I was doing. I was offering a safe place for people to enjoy the fantasy that they love, where they could indulge in it without being judged or shamed. And the more I did what I was doing, the harder it became to allow myself to grow into the person that I truly wanted to be. I had to decide, do I want to keep this a secret forever and be eternally mired in personal shame, or do I want to push through my fear? My therapist likened the choice to gay men and women coming out and how difficult that is. Because once it's out there, you can't take it back. Your life will forever be changed. Mine did. When I decided to start sharing with people openly and honestly what I put my heart into every single day, the most amazing things happened. I wasn't met with judgment and revulsion. I was met with fascination and praise. Luckily, I am surrounded by a loving, caring support system, so they were really just thrilled that I was doing something that I loved. I'm also lucky that we live predominantly in a progressive liberal city where all this can be talked about. But a lot of our country isn't like that, and a lot of the world isn't like that. And that's a shame, because talking about what I love about sex, what I love about my job, has made me more fulfilled as a person, more confident as a person, more happy as a person than I've ever been in my life. I've watched the shedding of my shame rub off onto so many other people in my life, prompting them to be brave with whatever it is about themselves they're afraid to share with the world. And this is the way it should be about sex. Sex should not be categorized and labeled. It should be fluid and open. It shouldn't be something that we don't talk about, or something that we hide or need to be shielded from. Sex enriches us as human beings. It builds empathy and intimacy and connections, all forms of it. And that is what my vision for the future is. That is what I hope I can continue to build through what I do. That in the future, it won't matter what fetishes a person has because nobody will be judged for them. Their sexual preferences will be honored instead of shamed. Talking about them will be no different than talking about what kind of food you like. I imagine a future where nobody should have to go through what I went through. They're comfortable with themselves. I imagine a future where talking about fetishes is so normal that we don't have to call them fetishes anymore. Because sex isn't just the act of sex. It is whatever excites you. And as long as whatever you enjoy doesn't bring harm or have a negative impact on your life or the lives of others, and everyone involved is consenting, then it doesn't matter what you're into. Because we are all into the same thing. And that is sex.
It won't be fetishized, right? So a couple of things about to happen before you all get to moving. I'm going to bring up some amazing folks to the stage, and then after that we're going to have a brief break. And when I say 5 minutes, I mean 5 minutes, and here's why. Here's why. Did you read your programs? Everybody look at their program real quick. Hold it up. Hold it up. Hold it up. After the break, what does it say? You won't miss that shit. So when I say 5 minutes, I mean 5 minutes. So you stretch it to and come back. Okay. So right now, I don't know how many of you know, this is the 5th anniversary of SEXx Conference. I'd like to bring, come on, Timmery and Alicia and Susan and Caitlin and David's not here yet. Please come to the stage. Please, 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 please. I had the honor of speaking at this conference several years ago. Year 2. And I just was so blown away by the work that they were doing. And I was honored when they asked me to join this collective of people. So I have been a member of the SEXx Collective for like a couple of years now. What we're doing, what they have conceived, is revolutionary. Please understand that, okay? So in celebrating 5 years of being able to do this kind of work in this day and age and this era of this fucking nincompoop who is living at fucking 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, it's revolutionary. And the fact that we pack the house every year says something. So I'm gonna let the co-founders, Timmery, Dr. And when we mentioned the Women's Medical Fund earlier, Alicia, I'm sorry.
So we're both sick. So a few years ago, I was at a TEDx talk. This is how the whole started. I'll be really quick. I was at a TEDx talk, and during the whole TEDx talk, I said it would be cool if we did this TEDx thing, but based on sex, because like, why not? And as the TEDx was happening, I reached out to this one and texted, and I said, hey, what about this cool idea? We have these TEDx things, but we talk about sex instead. And she's like, great, let's make it happen. And like a month or two later, this thing happened. And so we had no idea at the beginning that people would be interested in sex. I don't know. But people came out the first time, and they stayed the whole time, and people were really excited about the work. And so we knew that we were right in recognizing that people need more spaces like this to be able to talk openly and honestly about sex and fucking and monogamy and non-monogamy and all the things, kink and gore. I was so excited about that. But that we wanted a space that was accessible for folks, right? That wasn't just like stuck in some boring academia, which, no offense, Dr. Timmery Schmidt. Timmery is not boring, obviously.
Academia is a Ponzi scheme.
But we wanted to make it for everyday
Yeah, for everyday folks to come together, and so literally come together and come together. So thank y'all for helping us live out this mission. And our hope now is that y'all are now like the official ambassadors of sex, as if you weren't already, but that we want you to not only encourage folks to connect and talk about sex, but that, like Sydney and some other folks said today, it just takes one person to just be brave and to be able to engage and to break that ice around talking about sex and sexuality and what you like and what you don't like and what you need. So go forth and spread the love.
You'll hear more from me later. That's enough for me. Can we get a round of applause for that? Has been telling me off about the stage. When you came in, look at this face. So we are happy to keep doing this, and we ask that you continue to support this and let people know that we are doing this kind of work. Again, as I said, is revolutionary, and we're going to keep on as long as you keep supporting us. So thank you very much. You all can exit the stage. So right now, we did mention earlier that we are donating proceeds to the Womanist Working Collective, and so I just like to invite Latira, one of the co-founders of the Womanist Working Collective, to come and tell us about what they do.
Hello. So as Lisa Jones mentioned, we are a collective that's committed to Black womanhood, but also Black personhood for our gender non-conforming members and just community folks. So it's super important to acknowledge that we are not gender essentialists in this collective. We are simply trying to dismantle the patriarchy, which is connected to white supremacy, which is connected to imperialism, which is connected to capitalism, which is connected to all the things. Let me throw in cis sexism, sexism, all of those things. So that's kind of like the larger mission of our organization, but we are specifically a social action and support collective for Black women and femmes, both cis and trans, and gender non-conforming folks. So our work unapologetically centers our quality of life and livelihoods through community organizing, philanthropy, and self-care. So we function as a community of practice that prioritizes, and we prioritize our holistic well-being to move the conversation past just ensuring that we are safe and can survive, like aren't being murdered in the streets. We want to be able to thrive and be self-actualized human beings, just like everyone. That's part of quality of life, and that certainly includes sexual liberation. That is how we thrive. Right? So some of the projects that you would be supporting tonight with your donations include our Village Aunties Child Care Cooperative, our self-care programs, our safety network, our Black Women and Femmes Quality of Life Survey, our Reciprocity Time Bank, our housing collectives and co-ops, our self-defense programming, and our community education work. So if you are so inclined, please donate a little bit more so we can get a little bit more.
We are so honored to be able to help the efforts of the collective as much as we can. And if anybody paid attention to the Starbucks situation that was happening, there was the Black Workers Collective that was also there and supportive in doing things. So we have these kinds of organizations that are here in Philadelphia that are doing work to center the experience of Black and brown people.
The second half, your MC, the Luminous, Womanist Jones.
Please take your seats. And be quiet. can you all please take your seats? All right. So we're gonna get back. I gave you an extra 4 minutes. That's good. All right. So we are going to jump into the second half of our presentations. Later on this evening, we are going to have some of the sexiest performances you will find in Philadelphia. And I want to apologize. I neglected to mention that we are issuing a trigger warning. Some of the things that are being discussed can, be triggering for folks, and it's totally my apologies, and I accept that. And another thing that we wanted to address is the accessibility, right? So one of the things that we've been trying, so SEXx is like, when I say grassroots, I mean like what's below grass, because that's kind of where we are, and we don't have any kind of institutional or corporate support. We really do this as a labor of love, and we try to find venues that are as accessible as possible. And we know that this one was on the second floor, and you know what, we heard your responses, and we have collectively made a commitment to do better for next year. And this year we offered a live stream option, and we have several people that are watching live streams. So I want to say shout out to the live streamers who are here. We acknowledge you, and one of the things we're going to work on is this is being recorded, and afterwards we will have people transpose this so that, transcribe it so that it's more accessible to the deaf and hard of hearing community. We tried to get a signer, but it was like too late, and we didn't have the money. I'm sorry. So we are working on these things, and next year it's going to be better. Okay, so I just wanted to share that, and we appreciate those of you that are tuning in on our live stream. We love you, we appreciate you, we value you, and we heard you, and we are committed as a collective to doing better next year and going forward. So thank you for that. All right, I get to perform. Mr. Jones was named one of the 100 most influential Philadelphians last year. This Saturday, Mr. Jones will be giving a graduation speech at Vassar.
Yeah!
Mr. Jones is working on her third book, which will be coming out in the winter of 2019. And a bunch of other shit. So, here I am, Mr. Jones. I'm going to do a poem. And I know that we usually kind of save that for the performances, but fuck it. It's called Black Freedom, the Black Femme Future. If freedom is the goal, then shouldn't you seek to reach my mountaintops? Shouldn't you thirst for the opportunity to traverse my dips and my valleys? And when you're drained, shouldn't you scream out my name? If liberation is the apex, then certainly you should deeply crave my sex. You can't help but hunger for a taste of me, pathetically begging for a chance to have me. And when you can deprive yourself no more, you reach for me. As the future is inevitable to those strong enough to survive, perhaps you will paint it black and repair the brokenness you left in the fields, in the kitchen, in the quarters. Salvation's gonna cost you, and no white laws will protect you. Because in the future, sex is as black as a spades game played by Harriet, Sojourner, Ida, and Asada. When the big joker is dropped, the joke's on you, you who for centuries denied us the opportunity to thirst, drain, crave, taste, and indulge in the most pleasurable of things a body could know. We worked for you, existed for you, and you, and you. My fingers shredded picking cotton, making pillows upon which you forced me to lay, and had your way. I had no say, and to this day, I resent you in your race play. Because in the past, sex for us was never a game, played by willing participants who could enjoy the coming and the going, the coming and the glowing, the coming and the hoeing. All jokes aside, in the future, we will no longer have to hide our thirst, our desire, our cravings, our indulgences. And the most pleasurable things will be what our bodies can show. We will no longer work for you. Our bodies will not exist for you, or you, or you. Our bondage will be voluntary, our shackles a new sanctuary, manumission through our submission. When we gunplay, we will call the shots, and when you wield your whip, we'll think it's hot. In the future, I will beg to be owned, and in the future, I will be the one in control. What price do I have to pay to simply be allowed to play with him and her and them together? Will I be shamed or cursed? Will I be ignored or thrown away? Will I be reduced to a caricature, mocked for my secrets? Will I be told, not now, come back another day? Will you let me sharpen my teeth and bite into you? Draw your blood like you drew mine 2 centuries ago? Do I get to ride you, then him, then you again? Must I show papers or be given your express permission? Because in all this sex positivity, I rarely see anyone who looks like me. The black femme identity, the most powerful given tree, with roots so deeply entrenched in the bloodiest soil and wild branches expanding across continents, you appropriate our leaves and try to rob us of our sap. Still mad, old mister gave your angel a darker sister. The black femme identity is a slap in your face, and you love it, or you will. Because in the future, you're gonna get all this here. Fat bottom girl realness, black girl magic, and then some. When I feel free enough to do anything more than write a few hopeful words on a piece of paper. So, with that said, I do have a poetry book on sale. Alex, where are you? No, I'm dead. I only brought like 10 copies. If you look back,
9 copies left.
There's 9 left. Okay. So, Alex is selling my latest poetry book called The Secret of Sugar Water. It is an exploration of my understanding of black womanhood. So if you want, it's $10. I'll sign it for you, whatever. Alex, we take cash and cards. She's right there. She's my assistant. She's been my assistant for years. So I just want to shout her out because Feminist Joes would not exist without Alex, who's back there. All right. And now we move into the second portion. Okay. Okay, I'm going to try to pronounce this correctly. Ralph Andracchio.
Yes! First try.
Ivy League graduate. And Betty Smithsonian.
Yes!
First try. You got it.
All right. So, Betty Smithsonian is a comic, producer, musician, clown, improviser, and creator of many things. You can find her creating spaces, stages, and the like for the LGBTQIA as well as female and non-binary comics around town. She's a cast member of the award-winning M Crowd and hosts a long-running monthly sex-positive talk show, Porn Stash, with Ralph Andracchio. She performs stand-up comedy and musical improv regularly in Philadelphia and the outskirts. Ralph Andracchio is a full-time comedian, and for the past 10 years, he's been directing, producing, teaching, performing improv comedy all over the United States. He is the artistic director emeritus of Philly Improv Theater, as well as a cast member of multiple teams and short-run shows around the city. He, along with Betty Smithsonian, hosts the long-running monthly sex-positive comedy show. I said Porn Stash, write that down, Porn Stash, as they said it twice. You can also catch him every Wednesday night and his team, as well as the first with his first Fridays with his monthly show Untitled Art Meets Improv. Welcome to the stage, Ralph Andracchio and Betty Smithsonian.
That was our time. Thank you, everybody. That was it. How do you turn it?
I think that's it. Hello!
Oh, hello!
First of all, congrats to everybody you showed up tonight, and all of the presenters before us.
Great.
Phenomenal. Clap it up for yourselves.
So many smart people on this stage, and now it's our turn.
Yes. I am Betty Smithsonian,
I am Ralph Andracchio.
and we host a monthly show called Beth and Ralph's Porn Stash, or Porn Stash for short. It is a show where it's a bunch of comics. It's Ralph and myself. We sit on stage, we watch porn, we talk about it, we have conversation, we unravel the kink, we don't yuck anyone's yum, we have a space where people can ask questions, we laugh, we celebrate love, sex.
We use comedy as a vehicle.
Yes. To
help people learn
insert.
about sex.
Yes.
When you're say the mouth thing.
We use, when someone's mouth is open, laughing, we insert sex positivity because their brain is open.
Write that down.
Yes, and we do this because there's so much yuck around stuff, and we're here to rip it off.
So I'm going to take you through a little quick history of pornography. This is lightning round. As long as there's been society, there's been pornography. Ancient Egypt, the bathhouses at Pompeii, in the 18th century London when erotica started to bloom.
Madonna's second album.
Madonna's second. That's an oldie but a goodie. That's a deep cut. I like that one. And then when movies came around, pornography followed. So there was a golden age, 1969 to 1984, when pornography exploded. That's when all the live theaters started to shoot up everywhere. VHS tapes became ubiquitous. Now, pornography's everywhere, on our phones, on our laptops, on our watches. You can't get away from it.
What is the common thread?
What is it?
Here is the common thread. Wherever anyone was having pleasure or sex or watching it or seeing pictures of it, there was somebody next to them shaming them for it.
Shameful.
Shame.
You're shameful.
Shame, shame.
The new fragrance from Givenchy. Shameful.
So this is why we put this show together, because shame is yuck, right?
Yes.
And this show is all about uncovering that and shaking it loose with our own shame, with the things that Ralph and I felt when we would see things that maybe would make us cringe a little bit. We found our own selves saying, like, why do we feel this?
And as queer comedians, we have a lot more shame wrapped up in sex than maybe some other people. So we wanted to have this show as a vehicle to say, let's talk about all this shameful stuff and try to get over it together.
Let's expose the hard,
We're going to
wet
expose
shame.
So for example, aren't they lovely? I've committed the worst unforgivable sin as a gay man. I got old. I'm 42 years old. Hear me out. I'm not young anymore. I'm not a twink. I'm not ripped. I have a doughy old man body, right? And I feel like as you get older in the gay community, especially, you're not really allowed to be sexual anymore. You know, if I find somebody attractive or I go hit on somebody, I'm a dirty old man now. So for me, watching porn with older gentlemen in it has gotten me in the mindset of, oh wow, I can still own my sexuality when I'm older. Because these old guys fuck.
Yeah!
And they love it.
This is Ralph's new headshot, just a
That
heads
is.
up.
I'm available for bar mitzvahs and weddings. Look at that.
Beautiful.
So it helped me get over my own shame about getting older as a gay man, and I have a long and healthy sex life ahead of me in my 50s and 60s and 70s and beyond.
Yeah.
That's what porn's done for me.
And what Porn Stash has done for me in kind of exposing this stuff, one of the things that I felt shame about
Find your light. Find your light.
growing up in a space where my family really shamed people that were overweight, and hearing that, you know, my dad divorced my mom because she was overweight, and all of these negative images. Body sizes were things that made me cringe. It was difficult. I didn't want it to make me feel that, but it did. And even seeing it in pornography, I wouldn't search those things. I would search away from those. This show, we've shown all different sizes.
All different bodies, all different ages.
And over the
everything.
years, the cringe has gone away.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's been through exposing and visibility, and then having the conversations with people where I say, I'm ashamed that I feel this thing. And people like Tim Marie and other fantastic people that have been on our show say, it's okay. You don't have to shame yourself for having that cringe either.
So our show not only is about educating and informing people, but it's about making people laugh. So one of the fun things we do in our show is we play a game with the audience. We'd like to play one with you. Is that okay?
Yeah.
We have a game that we love called Porn Title or Shit We Made Up.
Yeah.
And what we're gonna do is we are going to scream out some titles of pornography, and you are gonna scream back whether it's real or whether it's made up. You ready to play? All right. All right. Number one. Glad he ate her. Glad he ate her. Is it real or is it made up? It's real. It's real. Totally real.
A Tale of Two Titties. Okay, you guys have all fucking seen that. That is real.
A streetcar named Fuck Me in the Ass. Is that real? That's made up. You guys are good at this.
This is the best crowd ever. All right, what about this one? Tight Tan Nick. Real or made up? What is it? I made that shit up.
Yeah. All right, one more. The bi-curious case of Benjamin's butthole. Is that real? That's made up. It's made up. We wish it was real, but it was not.
That was good fun. So on the second Friday of every month, you can find Ralph and I at the Philly Improv Theater. We welcome sex educators. We have VIP cards for anybody who wants to come and be in our audience who has a background in sex education or sex therapy. So please contact us through our Facebook page if you want to be one of our VIP audience guests.
And to create a safe space, we do a pledge in the beginning of the show, and then at the end of the show, we have a little spiel we give people we'd like to do right now.
Yeah, we're gonna do this spiel, this oath with everybody.
Oh, yeah, it's not an oath. You do the oath. I do the spiel. You do the oath.
Okay, awesome.
I'll do the spiel because we're already over time. Everybody's leaving.
We only have about 95 minutes left.
All right, so really quickly, we came up with this show, as we said before, to overcome people's problems with fetishes and kink and sex and create an open, positive space where people can talk and learn more about themselves and each other. So hopefully, at the end of tonight, you go home, you talk more about sex, you have more sex, even if it's with yourself.
Yes.
Thank you so much, everybody! Have a good night!
Rear end!
Rear end, thank you.
You're funny. Okay, funny, awkward handshake. You know black people have their own code with handshakes. So, you know. It's fun. All right, so we're gonna keep this going. You know, it's okay to laugh, right? There's liberation in laughter, and when you think about where we are in the world, and particularly in the United States. There's not much to laugh about. Hi, hello, I'm speaking. Woo! Hi, let's keep it down. Only because I'm awesome and I deserve respect, as does everybody that comes to the stage. All right, but seriously, we're in an era where it's like, if you don't laugh, what the hell else are we gonna do, right? So that's why we come together in these kinds of spaces and we remind ourselves that we are who we are. We are human beings. We are revolutionaries, and we will not accept the bullshit that is coming our way, right? All right. Speaking of bullshit that's coming our way, our next presenter, not really, you're gonna get it. You're gonna get it in like 5 seconds, it's gonna make sense. Isabel Connors. Isabel Connors, MSW, MEd, is a Philadelphia-based sexuality educator and consultant. She received her Master's of Education in Human Sexuality Studies and Master's of Social Work from Widener in 2017. Shout out to Widener. I got to speak at their social work committee. That was dope. Okay, Isabel has been working in the field since 2012, educating on topics such as BDSM and kink, sex workers' rights, LGBTQI issues. Outside of her work as an educator, she volunteers with Project SEXx, a Philadelphia grassroots organization that provides harm reduction resources to femme, trans, and non-binary folks living and working in the streets of Kensington Avenue. To discuss SEXtopia, how U.S. legislation is impacting the future of sex work.
Alright, so I did want to just give a brief content warning that I'm going to be talking about violence and sexual assault just briefly, but I did want to let folks know so they need to take care of themselves to go ahead and do that. I'm also not used to using cards, but I have a lot of shit that I had to pack into 5 minutes, or 5 to 7 minutes. So, Without further ado, here's my presentation. Okay.
Oh, sorry.
All right. Okay, this bill will and already has been responsible for the murder, rape, and arrest of sex workers and will further push trafficked people underground. Take a minute to let this sink in. Arabelle is talking about recent legislation that has swiftly and actively been destroying the lives of sex workers. And today I'd like to talk with you about Sextopia and the impacts it is having on the future of sex work. Before we can begin this conversation, it's important that we are all working from the same definition of sex work. Sex work is defined as the consensual exchange of sexual services for money, ranging from full service work to phone sex and everything in between. Most of my discussion today will be focused on sex workers who have direct in-person interactions with their clientele. To truly understand the gravity of Sextopia, we must first understand how online platforms provide integral harm reduction resources to sex workers. Online advertising and community forums are two common tools that sex workers use to protect themselves. Online advertising allows workers to move away from street-based work, making them less vulnerable to violence and arrest. It offers workers greater control over their working conditions, which has been linked to lower rates of HIV and STI transmission. And most importantly, it empowers workers to screen their clients. Community forums also provide workers with meaningful support. When sex workers are connected to one another, they gain a sense of community and solidarity. These forums are a primary source of peer education, where workers share tips on vetting clients, using condoms, handling and avoiding dangerous clients, and more. Now enter Sextopia, the law that's fucking it all up. The Stop Enabling Sex Traffickers Act, or SEXTA, was introduced to the Senate and allow victims and states to stop sex trafficking, or FOSTA, was introduced in the House, and these bills were combined to form Sextopia. Despite vocal opposition from constituents, Sextopia garnered great support in Congress, passing 388 to 25 in the House on February 27th and 97 to 2 in the Senate on March 21st. On April 11th, this was passed into law. So what's this all about? It essentially amends Section 230 of the Communication Decency Act, which provides immunity to all sites that host third-party content. And FOSTA amends this so that it is excluding people who are potentially facilitating sex trafficking. While this law's wording is disturbingly vague, essentially, user-generated sites are now liable for users' postings that might be knowingly facilitating sex trafficking, and any sites used to promote or facilitate sex work can now be charged with a federal crime. There seems to be a serious disconnect between what lawmakers are claiming this law does and what is actually happening. Lawmakers claim this law will stop trafficking by removing access and creating accountability. In reality, this law is conflating sex work and sex trafficking, and in doing so is stripping sex workers of access to harm reduction resources. Sextopia has resulted in closures of numerous sites that sex workers rely on for advertising, screening clients, and connecting with other workers online. Some of these names might be familiar to you. Craigslist and Reddit, for example, have shut down certain sections of their sites that sex workers rely on. Other sites have not closed, but they are actively pushing sex workers off of their platforms. Google Play now bans apps that support escort services. Google Drive is deleting explicit content without warning. Twitter is making sex worker accounts more difficult to find, and Skype is prohibiting nudity. While all of these closures mean, what does this all mean for sex workers? Since this new law has passed, pimps and dangerous clients have come out of the woodwork to prey on sex workers' vulnerability. As of April 26th, there were 13 reports of missing or dead workers, with at least 2 confirmed dead, as well as assault and rapes. Many of these sites have closed were low cost or free services, which means that they are impacting disproportionately marginalized groups, including and especially sex workers of color, trans and gender expansive folks, and folks who are survivors of sex trafficking. Here are what some sex workers are saying about Sextopia. This bill is creating a playground for predators. This bill is killing us. We can't screen clients like we used to, which is what was keeping us safe. It's forcing me to go back to the streets, walking up and down to find clients. In light of this new legislation, what can we envision for the future of sex work? Will sex workers continue to endure the brunt of racist, misogynistic, trans, and homophobic violence, pushed deeper into the shadows, or will this be a turning point that will ultimately lead to decriminalization? If prohibition has taught us anything, it's that banning something that people enjoy only leads to a spike in violence. Look at the war on drugs, for instance. Studies show that laws disrupting markets can paradoxically increase violence. Applying this logic to the sex trade, laws like Sextopia will only increase violence against sex workers. If there's one thing I know about sex workers, where they will adapt. This might be by going offline and freestyling or advertising in print, or this might be working online and creating new coded language or hosting our sites overseas. So what will this future be? A dystopia, or will it be something better? Well, that's up to all of us. Get involved by learning about this law and its impacts, by taking action in Whore Day, which I also just learned about, or the National Sex Worker Lobby Days, which are June 1st and June 2nd. And more information about this upcoming lobby day is available at survivorsagainstsesta.org.
That's some real shit. Like, you know what I learned in my feminist journey is that I don't have to experience something to be open to understanding and to support it. Right? And I've never been a sex worker, but I absolutely support sex workers' rights, their right to be free to choose to do what they want to do and not be persecuted or abused or violated for it. And so when we look at what's happening, there, please get more information. Please do your research. Please understand and look for ways that you can get involved in supporting sex workers who are now feeling even more endangered than before. All right, so thank you so much, Isabel, for that. All right, so as we keep the party going, how y'all feeling? Really good? This is a great show. So next we have Mr. Black and Leather Fox. So, Mr. Black, okay, this is the bio. Pomegranate are collectively Mr. Black and Ms. Pomegranate Foxy, two East Coast-based kink educators and bloggers who have presented nationally on issues such as consent, BDSM, inclusion, diversity, social media, leather communities, and sex-positive dynamics. Mr. Black is an experienced bondage rigger, lifestyle dominant, writer and kink presenter who also works with sex-positive nonprofits. Ms. Pomegranate is known as Foxy and holds the title of Mid-Atlantic Leather Woman 2018. An experienced lifestyle dom and writer, Foxy speaks nationally about inclusion in the leather and kink communities. To present the post-prom world, please welcome Mr. Black and Leather Fox.
Awesome. I think our bio summed it up, so we're not going to go over it again. But you can't tell who's who. This is Mr. Black. I'm Mrs. Pomegranate, also known as Foxy, Leather Fox, or that's too much. You can call me Amy. We run a blog called The Black Pomegranate. You can find us at theblackpomegranate.com or on Twitter at BLKPomegranate.
So in the future,
Pick up on. Okay.
In the future, what if proms were no longer a thing? What if nobody had to worry about prom? What if it wasn't a social thing? Because in the future, 50 years from now, when we think about proms, we're going to think about things like this. Come get your people.
I'm from Kentucky. This is what I was raised on.
Or we're going to think about something like this. Remember when we used to tell people if you really like somebody that you're really, really mean to them? Or we're going to think about something like this. And unpack this for a moment. This is some, when we look for pictures, this is something mild. This is the culture that we're giving, and this is what we're teaching to our young people. Because a prom, it's kind of like a time capsule. It's telling where we are at a given point. It's telling where we are in society, where we are in our culture, where we are in our lives, and it's kind of like a snapshot. But the thing is, if you're a little different, if you're outside of what's considered normal, the prom maybe wasn't such a great time if you even went. I didn't go to my prom. I stayed home, lifted weights, and read Daredevil 300.
Especially if you're queer or gay. I know that many of us skipped out on our proms because weren't able to go with the people that we really wanted to go with.
Because right now, where we are in 2018, if you look at how the prom is reflecting culture, proms are still heavily gendered. Are you wearing a tuxedo? Are you wearing a prom dress? Does it fucking matter? We're in a culture where sex ed in schools is devalued. Consent culture is devalued. We assume that young people will have sex when they go to the prom, but we don't give them the tools to have it safely, to have it consensually. We don't teach people about sex. We don't teach young people about sex. The thing is, 50 years from now, modesty ponchos won't be a thing. Because 50 years from now, what if we had an inclusive culture, consent-based culture? We had progressive sexual knowledge, and that knowledge, that consent culture, that inclusiveness, all of those things were more important than the social construct of a prom.
And promposals will hopefully be a thing of the past.
What if we, and the work actually starts now, so what if we progress to the point where the ideas that we have currently associated with a prom, it seemed antiquated, it seemed uncool, it actually seemed gross. We didn't want to do some of the things that we're doing right now. What if we realized things like gender is a social construct? What if we realized that diversity actually matters? What if we realize that it doesn't matter if we're having a seat at the table, we want to build the table? What if we realize all of these different things? What if we realize that we were able to celebrate who we are? What if we realized that that was more important to be who we are, what we are, that was more important than some rite of passage? What if all of these changes in the future represented that we were happier, healthier, that we were more sex positive, more sex aware, we had that consent culture, we had that inclusiveness? What if we got to the point where proms were something that in the past?
These slides moved a little fast, but one of the things that were on the slides, I don't know if you read them, covered toxic masculinity, which I think that prom absolutely reinforces, especially the promposals, which I have a special hate for, and again, the mode of dress. So I think that once proms go away, maybe some of that toxic masculinity that we teach teenage boys, which I have one, will go away.
How many people have seen like images of violence associated with a prom? And seen gunplay in a tweet string? Maybe 50 years from now, maybe we can get past that. If we have a takeaway, that's the takeaway.
stand with a black pomegranate. You can find us at blackpomegranate.com or on Twitter. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. How many of you actually went to prom? Yeah? I was the prom chairwoman. Probably was. I went by myself because my date couldn't make it because he dropped out. I mean, I went to a white-ass boarding school. When you dropped a black out? All right. So we have 2 more presentations. Can y'all hold tight? Can we make it through? Because I think this is going to be amazing. And I'm not going to say we saved the best for last because we think that everybody here is the best. But we have 2 more and we are so excited to bring them to the stage. So next up we have Liz. Liz is an active member of the Philadelphia BDSM kink community for the past 7 years. She has a BA in Communication Studies with an emphasis on art in the public sphere from Temple University. Liz is passionate about spreading sex-positive, pleasure-based sex education with as many people as possible. Aren't we all? Yes. The next career steps include applying to get her master's in sex education from Widener University. Shout out to Widener. Again, for being a hub. My friend Tracy is getting a PhD there, and it's amazing. Liz is excited about sharing her experiences and helping others on their journeys too. So if you could join me in welcoming Little Land, a utopia of love, laughter, and light with Liz.
Hi everyone. You ready? This is gonna be fun. Good. Hi, so my name is Liz and I'm a little! We have any littles in the house tonight? Yeah, some little enthusiasts, nice. Some daddies, mommies, partners, okay? You're all welcome. All right, so when I think of utopia, my personal utopia, I think of Little Land. So what exactly is Little Land? Little Land in my mind is this magical, shame-free space for adults to explore the kinks, identities, and anything associated with being a little. I don't think that we are currently in a culture right now that fully embraces this, and I would love to live in a land where this is possible. I think there's some confusion right now, both in the BDSM and in the wider mainstream vanilla culture about what a little is. All right, yeah, like when I first came into the community, I was like, oh, this is kind of weird, I don't want to feel about this, I'm a little uncomfortable. But throughout my journey, and my journey is continuing, I found everyone loves a daddy. What is that about? It's so trendy to be a daddy right now, and I hear nothing about littles at all. Makes me sad. I'm a sad little avocado right here, okay? I don't like it. It's not okay. So, what is a little? Well, first of all, a little is an adult, okay? It's all consenting adults. Any age adult, any gender adult, any sexual orientation, commonly found in the BDSM or kink community. And always between consenting adults. There's no children involved. This is not pedophilia, okay? So, how do you spot a little? What do they look like? Well, they can look like me. Cute. Knee socks, tutus, or cute little onesies. Littles love glitter and patterns and bows, anything fun, colorful, anything that like you might put a little child in potentially, like to wear stuff like that. Activities, littles like to do puzzles, have story time, Legos, love Legos, coloring. This is just like a snapshot of the tons of fun activities that littles like to do, either by themselves, with other littles, or with other people in general. Snacks. You all know, okay? Everybody likes snacks, but littles love snacks, okay? Yeah, you know what I mean. Juice boxes, dino chicken nuggets. I'm a vegetarian, and dino nuggets, I cheat. Alright, what do littles act like? Well, besides being super cute and funny, they can be silly, derpy, or even like bad and mischievous and a bad little kid. Yeah. Being a little is a great opportunity to explore different like sides of your personality that maybe don't fit into adult life, including sexy time. All right? Yeah, some littles like to be spanked or like have sex or orgasms with their partner. Not all littles like this, so if you are a little or you want to play with a little, make sure you talk about this. Consent is really important. Negotiate that stuff ahead of time, preferably. There's different types of being littles. There's role play, where you pretend to be different types of people or characters or animals. Age play, different ages. Or age regression, where you psychologically regress to a younger version of yourself. Lots of fun options here. So, where to be a little? Potentially at a party. BDSM kink parties, you can be a little there. With other littles, there's sometimes like a designated space. It's like Little Land. Small version. Or at home, you know, that's okay too. Privacy at home, if you're not into public stuff. Safety is important. Make sure you feel safe and comfortable exploring this side. So, besides the snacks and the games and all the other fun things about being a little, why be a little? Adult life is hard. Taxes, jobs, commutes. My fun level gets low very quickly as an adult, and sometimes I just want to let go. I want to have fun. I don't want to have to deal with responsibilities. Also, being a little gives me this wonderful opportunity to be creative and to create art or to create role play scenarios or to just use my imagination just for fun. I'm not getting paid to do it. This is just something that I'm doing for me or with my partner. Also, being in a little headspace is a great opportunity to be cuddly, be emotionally vulnerable. Littles love cuddles and holding hands and just giving kisses and just enjoying this really simple side of giving pleasure to other people. They're really sweet human beings, and it's a great opportunity to do that. Littles are also gifts to their community. All right, littles are highly undervalued, in my opinion. Yes, they are. They are so kind and nice. I don't know if any of you have ever been to a BDSM party, but one of my favorite experiences was going there and receiving candy. Little was just handing out candy, like, you want some candy? Yes, I do want some candy, thank you. So, you can go to parties, potentially right now, to meet littles or be a little or explore that side. Or online, that's another space. There's websites, chat forums, where you can get resources, talk to other littles, or just engage in that play. You're right. So ultimately, the future I envision is one where this cute little husky puppy with a hat on is, first of all, known, like, oh, this is a little symbol, and also, like, respected and valued. Because, oh no, I'm almost done, I promise. Because that's exciting to me. I want to be valued and respected. I want other people to be valued and respected just as much. Thank you. Just as much for their kinks. Either side of the slash is equally important. You can't have the bigs and the daddies without the littles and the middles and the other side, okay?
So, the sadist in me takes a fucking lollipop out of the little's hand and eats it in front of her face. And makes her beg for it. And I'm back. So, we are coming to the end of our presentations, but that does not mean the party is stopping, okay? So what does that mean? For those of you that, you came for the presentations, you can stay for the second part. We did have a suggested donation of $25 for both, but as you know, we are pay what you can and we will not kick you out. But there are going to be some kick-ass performances, and let me tell you, last year, I spent the whole time on the side, yes, bitch! Like that to everybody. Didn't matter who you were. You got a yes, bitch. Okay, because the shit was real. So you don't want to miss that. And there's people that are coming that are only coming to see that, and then they miss this whole thing and they just whatever. But if you bought both, shout out to everybody that got the combo tickets. We appreciate you. We're gonna have an amazing, amazing, amazing evening, but you are gonna get a bit of a break. So just have a little, tip your bartenders, get your drinks. This is a Jack and Ginger with a splash of grenadine. It's my signature drink. It's what I drink all the time. Try it, it's delicious. And without further ado, we are going to bring up our final presentation, our final presenter to the stage, Dr. Zuleika Hepworth-Clark, PhD, MSW, MEd, is a sexuality educator, African-centered social worker, cultural and clinical sexologist, sex psychologist, decolonizing auto-ethnographer, and sexo, you know what? You should have been first. The woman that been to school, goddammit. She knows what the hell she's talking about. You gotta put some respect on her name. Zuleika specializes in human sexuality, gender and relational diversity, clinical and cultural sexology, African-centered social work, sexuality education, all of that. Oceanality, yeah. That's good. An African-centered sex-positive post-colonial paradigm that affirms diversity in sensuality, sexual pleasure, and eroticism. Zuleika's passions include increasing critical thinking, expanding self-awareness, and self-reflexivity, empowerment, counter-oppressive discourses, unlearning colonial mentalities, decolonial considerations, mindfulness, justices in social, racial, erotic, epistemic, ecological, etc., and healing. So I need to sit down for this one. Please help me. She's already on the stage. Fine, she want to be Dr. Zuleika Hepworth-Clark.
Greetings, beautiful, powerful people. Hi. Welcome to a decolonial sextopia. I'm representing the Pluriversity, and I provide counseling, transformative education, decolonial guidance, and unlearning of oppressions, healing from trauma, and increasing self-love and self-care skills. We are all interconnected. I want to acknowledge Indigenous people. Borderlands have been erased. Reparations have been granted. Your debts are forgiven. Sovereignty has been realized. The earth is honored. Water is healing, respected, infused in our bodies. We don't take the environment for granted. Our safety and wellness is valued and cared for. Water is our teacher. I want to thank life-giving forces. Love. It's unlearn. The real mental illnesses is racism and sexism and cissexism and heterosexism and ableism. And treatment should be widely available for those that are suffering from such illnesses and affected by them. We practice compassion. I've learned from my past, and history will no longer repeat itself. Her stories, their story, our stories are heard and widely available. Cis heteropatriarchy has been destroyed. We respect each other humans and non-humans alike. We are free. What are ways you love yourself and others? Think about ways you receive love. Know yourself. This can be found in your embodied wisdom, androgynous zones, explored with open minds. Euphoric thresholds have been busted open. We live in euphoria. Social justice, economic justice, erotic justice for all. Everything is just. Equality is realized. Sensual liberation. Beauty can be found in the universe, and the universe can be found in us. In a concept that I love is the pluriverse, that speaks to that there are multiple worlds that exist simultaneously without hierarchy or binaries. Inclusion is fundamental. And in our pluriverse, diversity and pleasure is affirmed, and sexual expression is accepted. Respect. It looks different for different people, and I respect those differences. I respect you. Thank you for being who you are. Ooh, thank you. Thank you, air. Thank you, water. Thank you, earth. Thank you, breath. I want to talk about an energy matrix, forces of natures, deities that are genderless. They've had multiple partners and stories of dynamics between metamors. Our spiritual stories are diverse, multiple perspectives. Stories are available that are non-patriarchal. Oshun, known as the source, love, sensuality, can represent power and knowledge. Pleasure is healing. Sexual rights includes the right to information on sexualities from diverse perspectives. We can heal. Oceanality affirms the normality of sexual pleasure and eroticism, and we can understand this through our embodied wisdom. The devouring vagina, a concept in oceanality, engulfs, surrounds, swallows, and the penis is made to disappear. But the genitals aren't the only sex organ available to us. There's diverse ways of connecting, celebrating diversity. Expand your narratives. You are empowered, and whatever excites you. Yes, that. We have the right to self-determination and to create our own empowering narratives. We have the right to define sex through our own embodied wisdom and sense of fulfillment. What is sexy isn't defined by others. It's okay to understand sex, beauty, gender, pleasure subjectively without shame and judgment. Sexiness is pleasurable, and pleasure does not have to be limited by our conditioning. Many different ways. You know, some people can get eargasms. Some people can have mindgasms. Some people can experience love in so many ways, and to explore and understand what that looks like for you. And subject to change, it could change at any moment, and transformation is available to us in the moment. And so I appreciate you. This is a model that I created based off of the literature that centers pleasure, and I want to thank everyone, and I have so much gratitude for the future and possibilities of a sextopia, and so thank you for imagining with us and being in this powerful space. Thank you.